Hi, my name is Miguel Landestoy, and I'm a Boston-based jazz musician and educator. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Philanthropy Together for inviting me to play for this We Give Summit. As a musician, I believe in the collective's ability to make something special and help other folks, so I really appreciate you all bringing me on, and I hope you enjoy the summit and this rendition of Pure Imagination.
Bravo, 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 bravo. I don't know you, but I feel that there is no better way to close this second day of We Give Summit with a powerful session and beautiful soul nurturing music. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Miguel Landestoy, for sharing your beautiful music with us. And I thank you everyone for joining us tonight for Rooted, Resisting, and Raising Resources for Gender Equality. Yes, I am so excited about this timely conversation that, I know it's it's always timely, but especially now, we have to come together to do something for gender equality. I want to just remind everybody that closed captioning is available. You can enable that at the bottom of your Zoom screen. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sara Lomelin. I'm the CEO of Philanthropy Together. We are a global initiative to grow and strengthen the field of giving circles across the globe. And this We Give Summit is one of our programs, and we're so honored to have all of you here. So excited for this conversation. Too much to unpack, to hear from these powerful women here. And please engage in the chat. We also encourage you to share your feedback. At the end of the session, there will be a 2-question poll. And with that, I am going to pass it to the wonderful Elizabeth Barajas-Román from the Women's Funding Network. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Sara. It's wow. Thank you for that, and what a beautiful, beautiful way to start this session. It's 8 o'clock here on the East Coast, and I'm actually feeling so relaxed, and I wish I had a glass of wine or something that was just so beautiful. But it's not time for wine right now, because right now we're here about rooted and resisting and raising resources. So thank you so much for inviting us. And thank you so much to this wonderful panel who you will be hearing from. There is so much to unpack, and each one of them are going to share just the very tip of the iceberg of the amazing things that they're doing in regards to the giving circles. And you're going to have to follow up with them later after this, because there's so much more that I'm sure you're going to be able to learn from them. Well, we kick off this panel really talking about how giving circles are part of Women's Fund's DNA. And I mean, that statement is it's just really, we're going to go a little bit into the history. And we know now, as Sara has mentioned, there's never been more important time in terms of shifting power and democratizing philanthropy than we have right now when it comes to women, especially all over the world, but especially here in the US, where we've fallen more than 30 years behind progress for liberation of women here in the US. And so we are, without further ado, my first question is actually to the group. Anyone wants to take this question? If you could take this, our audience, to a little bit about what the history, the connection of giving circles and women's funds. What is that connection? A lot of people know a little bit about it, but if you could tell us just as a really quick history of what that connection between women's funds and giving circles is. Take us down that history a little bit. Anyone wants to take that? And if you could please introduce yourself with a small introduction when you speak as well.
Hey, yeah, I'll get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Latanya. Mapp, Frett, and I'm over at the Global Fund for Women based in San Francisco. And our fund is maybe about almost 35 years old. And it's such a great story of the founders. There were 3 women, and the one from New Zealand was telling me about their effort to really want to try to get women champions funded around the world. And they were asking all the foundations that we know, all the biggies, if they could do that. And they were like, oh, but no, they don't have an organization, or they're not registered in that country. So, and we can't do this, and we can't do that. And so they just started running around asking women with some wealth in Silicon Valley if they could give money to give to women overseas who were just doing incredible things. And that's a giving circle in the best way. And that's how it all got started, just asking women here to give to women in other places, and collecting that money and letting it grow, and seeing the fruit that came out of that has just really been amazing.
Thank you so much, Latanya. Again, just quick, and there's so many rich stories, and I'm sure each one of you have stories about how even how that's connected to your women's fund. But we want to jump into the future and thinking about what's next, because women's funds have always, not only were there in the very beginning, but have, because of that, had a head start and have been already on the cutting edge of what's next. And so we want to jump into that really quickly. I'll first go to Latanya, if you wanted to kick us off, because you jumped in right at the very beginning. If you could tell us a little bit about what's that cutting edge tools? How is the Global Fund for Women using or thinking about giving circles as kind of not only from a deep rooted history, but how it's using it as a tool for resistance for the future and shifting power, especially now when we're facing all these unprecedented challenges for women's autonomy.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. And I know my colleagues are, will agree that, to support and fund systems that address all of these intersectional inequalities that women are facing here and around the world is got to be our primary concern. In supporting grassroots gender justice, the advocates, the activists, the mamas and the aunties, who are really trying to do this work strategically and requiring additional resources that we know is just pennies that they're working with, and they're able to do so much with it. So we started at Global Fund for Women a program that was called or is called Champions for Equality. And it's a learning program that involves women who have some interest in funding work overseas to come together, and not just to sort of write a check, but actually to learn in partnership with the women who are doing the work. And so we invite in experts, we support the movements themselves, but we also visit them and have them meet the people who are supporting that work here from the US in the countries where they are. I mean, and it's sort of champions are trying to apply this knowledge and explore the context of shifting power, but also an issue. And ironically, the issue that the first cohort of champions dealt with was sexual and reproductive health and rights. And I talk about this as a tool because what we're experiencing here in the US, we've actually had some very different experiences. We've had successes in other parts of the world. And all of it together, to me, is just how we have to show up for each other, how we have to lead the way on how we want to treat each other, how we want to both utilize the work to change system and structures that have not served women well, but how we also want to make sure that we're learning as we go so that we can apply these lessons around the world, including right now here in the US. So I'll stop there and let my colleagues talk about what tools they're finding through their learning circles.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Latanya. I think I'll hand it over to Felicia. You're my next.
I'm the next in the Hollywood Squares. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to talk about this. Latanya said a lot, and I will just add that giving circles appealed to women really because they were excluded from traditional philanthropy. I'm always reminding younger people that women did not have the right to have a checking account or a credit card in their own name until 1974. So many of our organizations are around the same age, and it was really a way to, democratize. Before that was a word, right? It was a way to democratize philanthropy. At Chicago Foundation for Women, we have been hosting circles. We started with Leadership Council since 1997. And currently we host, they've evolved over time, identity-based, or, there was a lot around geographically based in Chicago. Chicago is a tale of two cities in a lot of ways. So the South and West Side. So we have a South Side Giving Circle that focuses on Black women and girls, and a West Side Giving Circle as well as other communities throughout Chicago. But the thing about that is the power of that collective giving. In total, they have surpassed $1.3 million in giving, and that's pretty significant. And so reminding everyone, these women come to the circle with their own wealth, and they have different grants or different priorities. Each has a charter. They prioritize the things that are important to them. And I think it's important to note that, particularly in communities of color, that the women in those communities haven't seen traditional philanthropy show up, right, in their neighborhoods, and that those investments are in their neighborhood. So it's really, really personal. And they really do show up and make those investments. And as a foundation, what's really wonderful for us is that then that allows us to see those organizations that we honestly may not see ourselves from, from where we sit and how we're looking out across the entire city, because it's very grassroots. But then we get to do the capacity building and the other wraparound supports with those organizations, supporting their leadership and so on. And so I'm really excited to be part of the conversation. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Felicia. I love that. And the next on the Hollywood Squares is Anna. Would you like to?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. This is a great conversation. I'm very inspired by what we do in New York. This is the New York Women's Foundation, but also very much what we all do together. So there are two. I think Latanya said that every foundation is a big giving circle, right? That we all began from women coming together and saying, we got some stuff to do together. We got to invest on ourselves. No one else is investing on us. Felicia just said that, right? Clearly in communities of color. And we are the solution to ourselves. So giving circles give that sense that we matter, right? That we, if I don't have $1 billion or hundreds of millions, I still can come together with my sisters and I can make a difference. So that's really important. There are two of those at the New York Women's Foundation. One is the Emerging Leaders Network, and that is by and for young women. And is not specific to young women of color, but predominates young women of color. And the other is the Circle of Sisters for Social Change. And that is specific for women of color and our philanthropies. Now, the way that they operate is they really are self-guided, right? Like we are saying, it's a self-determination thing. We believe that our problems and solutions live in the same place. All of us believe that. And that we are our own solutions, right? So it's a way of organizing ourselves and putting our resources together. Alone, a member of the Emerging Leaders Network cannot make a big difference, but together they can make a big difference. We create a lot of proximity between the members of the giving circle and the grant making. So they become part of our participatory grant making cycles, because as Felicia was saying, is a way for us to get very close and for the foundation to do better work. And as Latanya also said, is a way for people to learn, right? Is a way to learn so that we don't think that because we have a little bit of money or a lot of money, we know it all. The giving circle creates a safe community for that learning too. So, but I think the most important thing is for each of us to hear that these are normal people doing this. This is normal people. This is what I mean. You don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to be a billionaire. You don't have to be in the elite of the financial realm. As Felicia said, is our own financial autonomy. Giving circles make that possible.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I'm going to go to Lauren is on my next.
Okay. Well, again, I also thank Philanthropy Together and Sarah for having us here today. It's wonderful to be with my sisters. A couple of things. One, in terms of the history, Elizabeth, I'd like to go back a little bit to the history of the Black community. And it is deeply rooted within the Black community to invest our time, our talent, our treasure, our testimonial, our social ties, and our tenacity, I would also say. And that showed up in terms of rent parties or childcare. Giving circles at that time may have been more, may not have had a name. It's inherent to our culture to cultivate our community and to provide support for our neighbors. Giving circles In my experience, a part of the history I'd like to acknowledge and do a shout out to Lynetta Gilbert, who was at the Ford Foundation and helped to start the Community Investment Network. She really helped stand that up and all of those T's. But it also demystifies philanthropy, and the word power was used to recognize that there is power in all of those T's of time, talent, treasure, testimony, is really a part of what Anna just said about normalizing what philanthropy is. At the Women's Foundation of Colorado, we have cultivated over the course of our history, first an international giving circle that has about 30 members and has given close to $1 million since its inception to organizations supporting women around the world. But we also have a range of those, for example, women who came together because they were breast cancer survivors and who seek to give in a health arena. Two other distinctive from a social justice perspective. One is SPIN, Sisterhood of Philanthropists Impacting Needs, a group of Black women giving to grassroots organizations. We know that women of color are underinvested and undervalued around the country and certainly in philanthropy. We know that they get a fraction of the 1.9% that women generally give. So we're amplifiers as well as demystifiers in the context of the collective giving. We also hold, I believe, is the first in the country, a women's impact investing giving circle where funds are pooled. Women learn together. We've talked about learning together, not just giving the money together, what impact investing means, and then support women entrepreneurs. We have heard throughout the pandemic how important it is to support women entrepreneurs, and in particular, women of color entrepreneurs, as a linchpin to maintaining and ultimately growing our economy for the benefit for all. So giving back is actually not only the institutional component that we've talked about here, but I think we need to honor how women have given, and in particular in marginalized communities, have used whatever resources. We need to give tribute to those multiple generations that have done that.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Our impact investing giving circle has given, just in this past year, 125,000 to refugee, immigrant, Black women, multiple opportunities.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And I think we'll probably have some little bit of time to kind of go back to that, some questions on that. Last but certainly not least, Gloria.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And it's so wonderful to be here with my sisters. Again, I get to learn a little bit and share the history of giving circles at the Women's Foundation of Minnesota. Everything that has been said, I want to echo, in particular, this notion that giving circles allow for people to, invest by and for, and that self-determination is so important and something that women's foundations are cultivating, right? It is about that democratizing of philanthropy and really formalizing a lot of the structures that Lauren was talking about that so many communities of color had been involved in. And I really appreciate you lifting that up. At the Women's Foundation of Minnesota, we have now evolved to a space where we have donor advised funds that co-invest with the Women's Foundation of Minnesota. So we do raise funds from national and local institutions, as well as individuals, to invest in some of the programs that are important to us, that really are informed by the research and listening that we do across the state of Minnesota, recognizing that we have different communities of women across the state whose needs are uniquely different. And the donor advised funds that we have, women get excited to be in proximity and to understand and learn from community about ways in which they can make a difference. And so our organization has participatory grant making as one of the strategies that really allows people to invest. And as Anna said, you don't have to be a millionaire to do this. We're talking about regular people who want to be a part of a solution. And, as an example, one of the campaigns that we had at the Women's Foundation was the Minnesota Girls Are Not for Sale campaign. And when we were working with the legislature to pass legislation, we had a need to pay a fiscal note in order to pass this legislation. And we had donor advised fund holder step up and say, I want my money to be used for that. And then for her to think about how this created a change statewide to ensure that women were no longer treated as perpetrators, criminals, but rather recognize the injustices that were being done to them was really important. So I want to stop there, and we can build on these ideas as we go forward.
Thank you so much. Well, one of the things that I know that as organizations, one of the things that I hear a lot is, wow, giving circles are a lot of work. In addition to the, the organization you're already running, the Giving Circle, you've already touched on all the different ways that it's kind of the juice is worth the squeeze, with that. Could you talk a little bit more about, especially right now, the type of flexibility? And Gloria, you talked about it a little bit, like, oh, we needed this and we could call on. And Laura, you also talked about, investing, how it's giving you a different edge. Again, this is open to everyone. Could you talk a little bit about what makes this worth it? There's women's foundations already are democratizing dollars. What about Giving Circles in particular is so important and worth it around the relationships and the partnerships?
Elizabeth, I'll just say something first. It really is about the community. Too often, philanthropy is not really proximate to the work. And, often it's coming into communities. I think someone said this, right? The people who are closest to the problems are also ideators of solutions. They actually know what works. And too often government philanthropists come in and tell them, well, this is what you need, this is what you should do. And our jobs really should be about listening to the voice of the community and then following their lead. And the reason why these giving councils and circles for us are so important is because they represent the broad geography of our city, right? North Shore, Western suburbs, West side of Chicago, South side of Chicago, right? And also issues, Young Women's United, LGBTQ Council. And so they are really advocates in a way for their own communities. The other thing that they bring to the foundation, of course, they participated in our broadly in our participatory grant making and help us there. But they're also good board members, right? We recruit from the Giving Councils and Circles and add that community voice each year, additional community voice and perspective to our board, which is to the board of directors, which is also extremely, extremely important. Those relationships and the community focus, I think for us is really job one.
I
want to
that word.
Do you mind, Lauren, if I just pivot?
Oh, sure.
That piece about the being the people closest to the challenge, should I just say, being the people that also come up with the solutions. And I know for Global Fund for Women, since our founding, it's been 170 countries, and more than 5,000 partners and grantees. But the thing that, I really, touched me was the Women's Fund in Ukraine. And so, we have seeded over the years, national funds, regional funds, thematic funds for women. And this was the one where things really got hot. And when Russia went into Ukraine, it was such a joy and a comfort to know that the Ukraine Women's Fund had been started and had been existing for now more than, I think, 12 years. And that they really were, they weren't leaving, they were like, we have to stay because most of the people that we work with and that we support, don't have the kind of resources that are going to allow them to evacuate the country. And so they were there to sort of shepherd a lot of, sort of internal migration in the country to educate and to pass out information to women who needed it, to where to go, where not to go, what was happening. And it was just so incredible to be able to talk to them on a regular basis, because it's like we get the news, but we don't really know. And I think that's the beauty of the giving circles and the women's funds, is that the people closest to the community are able to support them when they need it the most. And it just, Felicia, as you were saying that, it just made me think of Ukraine and how important it was to be able to have them there for the women who couldn't get out. Go ahead, Lauren. I'm sorry I interrupted.
Oh, no, that was a beautiful, wonderful story. I'm so glad that you shared that. It's just so incredibly relevant. I was also thinking about when Felicia said community. We are a community foundation. Gloria mentioned holding DAFs, donor advised funds. So we give grants from the money, the donations that we receive from individuals, businesses, et cetera, and those resources, but we also have donor advised fund as well. All the tools, impact investing, policy, public policy. So what also happens is critical in these giving circles as they learn together, they themselves represent community members. And yes, they may be pooling resources. It might be $1 a day. I mean, there are a whole range of what that might look like, but then they are also motivating each other to become involved in the community in more significant ways. I can't help but call out today the critical impact for us to have mobilized, informed community members. And we are there, we are mobilized, we are informed community members, but who are now investing and demystifying that power of what it means for us to move the needle for access to abortion. No matter what decisions may in fact be made in other places, we have ways to build networks of support. So I have a dream. This hasn't happened yet. I don't know how my staff will feel once I say this out loud, but I would love for us to have a fund that is around access to abortion, that is in particular a giving circle of pooled, mobilized women, individuals, diverse women who recognize what's at stake if we care about gender, racial, and economic equity. Similarly, support for democracy. I think there's some huge opportunities for us to come together and think about how we protect our democracy and our freedoms through giving circle models, as well as the co-investing, Gloria, that you mentioned, of some of our other resources and the participatory grant making that goes on throughout all of our work as well. And trust, it's about trust, it's about believing. So philanthropy means love. You can't have real love without power and accountability. Otherwise, I actually heard this from someone else and I can't remember who it was. Otherwise, it's romantic and anemic.
Well, thank you for that vision, Lauren, because that is exactly thinking about access to abortion and the crisis in the U.S. right now and other countries as well, but unimaginably also in the U.S. The ability to have again, that informed citizenry that's also invested and aligned is literally the power of organizing information around the country, and also how critical it is to think about what's at stake is not just about abortion, right? We have in those same states in the U.S., these abortion bans are also happening in the same places where there's voting rights suppression as well. So those two things, we talked about democracy, these actually are parallel struggles. And what is, again, love to hear from others about how you're thinking about giving circles already existing. These are not new things. These are not new innovations, but there are innovations that are really whose time has come in this particular moment when you need the flexibility and the power of the people really to be able to make change.
Yeah, this is Gloria. I wanted to just speak to this briefly. One of the opportunities in building these communities of giving is that you can use it as a platform to learn and connect folks, again, to what the issues are and how they can make a difference. And so in this moment, we are working to educate our community of donor advised fund holders about the programs that exist for reproductive justice, and to help them think about the history of the rights that so many of us have enjoyed that are now in jeopardy. So many people have said, I've heard, said here in Minnesota that they can't believe this is happening. Well, as I understand it, this has been in the making for about 30 years, plus, since we've had Roe v. Wade, people have been organizing to dismantle it. And so we have to, continue to educate people about how these organizing systems work and how we activate ourselves as community members to be engaged and informed. And then we can have flexible capital to help folks as we're navigating the barriers that exist while ultimately working toward systems change. And that systems change won't happen without this movement, without this collective voice that we are all working toward. And that is what I love about being part of this movement with women's foundations from around the country, because we have a point of view and have power. And we know it's incredibly relevant at this particular time to harness that energy to make systems change and ensure that we're not only preserving the rights for reproduction, but voting rights and all the other rights that are just going to be falling right behind if we're not careful.
The comment that I'd like to make is that it took the opposition to Roe versus Wade 50 years to come after it. Let me just remind us, it took them 50 years. It will not take us 50 years to get not only Roe versus Wade, but better than it was. Because I also want us to remind all of us that it isn't a perfect situation around abortion rights and access, because poor women who are predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly women of color in this country have had enormous difficulty with access to quality, safe, funded abortions. The Senate moved right away to pass amendments to limit that kind of access. And what happened in the 50 years? Women's foundations were created. So now let's remember that we have a very different reality from 50 years ago. All of us are describing that giving circles are part of mobilizing people and saying, I vote when I can vote in democracy, but I vote with my dollars, as Lauren said before, and that has happened over centuries, right, in our communities. That, I grew up in a community where SUSU exists, where we put our monies together and we move together where we can't move alone. So in the current, I'm going to say the stepping up of the fight, we are much stronger, we have much better tools, and we have the financial support to the movement, which is the women's foundations, which are the giving circles, which are the ways that we come together, that were not there 50 years ago. That's how we know that we are so much stronger, so much more sophisticated. And Lauren said, we can respond quickly. And look at the responses that have happened. And all of us here in philanthropy are ready to accompany the movement, I'm going to say, of resistance and evolution of the justice issues, right? And reproductive justice issues have to do, evidently, with full abortion rights to everyone and quality care. But they also have to do with the support of parents throughout what that is, right? We can't just focus and have the hatred and see that the hatred towards women, which is hatred and control, is only with abortions. It continues in other parts, right? If we were not, we wouldn't have the kind of maternity death and even infant mortality death that we have concentrated in Black communities and other poor communities in the country, right? So what am I saying? Giving circles and women's foundations allow us to fight back in a much faster way. It will not take us 50 years. How many will it take it? Not even one, I don't think.
Sí se puede. I'm there with you. Oh my gosh, this is what I'm always saying. I'm like, whenever honestly, like, okay, let's go. We're ready to go. Well, I also want to say that the women's funds were created, but also I'm looking to my sister Latanya, who, thinking about all of the amazing examples around the world where women have successfully beat back this exact challenge successfully, and even Mexico, Argentina. We're talking about and women's funds and giving circles were right there in that fight, and so much. And this is why why I know that we will be successful is that we're not only the women's funds in the U.S. but learning from our sisters around the world who have faced this type of tyranny, outward tyranny on their liberation, and have fought back and won. And so, Latanya, could you talk a little bit more about the inspiration you get from those from around the world and the women who are rooted and resisting around?
No, I mean, thank you. And thank you, Anna. I'm feeling already uplifted, right? I mean, I do get inspiration from watching women around the world. And what I want to say is that, we continue to take care of each other. And by doing that, it's, we want the best policies, we want the best systems, but at the same time, we know that while they're figuring it out and the opposition is, sort of in their, whatever moment, which is all very intentional, we have to make sure women get what they need. And I love the conversation around that, right? Because that's not going to stop. I've worked in countries around the world where, abortion was never on their books, right? But they provided a service to women who needed it, when they needed it, how they needed it, and what made them comfortable. And I think we have to, and that is such a good point about us being stronger, having more resources at our disposal. The science is on our side. We have lots more opportunities to figure out how to take care of our own health needs than we had before. And we've seen it. We've seen it work around the world, not just in one country, one region, but in many, many countries. And in some ways, we might be behind the curve. So and I also am thinking about what Gloria said, a lot of the groups that have worked on these issues in other countries, they're not like abortion groups. They're probably not even reproductive health groups, right? They're just women's groups. They're community-based organizations that are trying to make sure we have a path to a future that we all want. And that means that we have to, and I know we do this in Women's Fund, so I'm talking not to the choir, but to the others, that we have to stop restricting the way we give women money in these countries. So if they're working on climate, this is an issue that requires them to work on reproductive justice, right? So, I mean, if they're working on education, then this is an issue for them too. So we have to sort of let go of that notion that we have to silo the way we give money. We don't have to do that with women's groups. I'm telling you, those groups that are working on these issues, they pivot, they're agile, they work on where it's needed. And so we have to follow with the way that we support and give them resources. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah. Elizabeth, I find myself thinking about, you've always said women make a way out of no way. Women make a way out of no way. With collective giving, we have more way. So there you have it.
That's the soundbite. Thank you so much, Lauren, for that. And I know we don't have that much time, and so I wanted to just give everyone, we promised everyone who was going to attend this session that they would come away with one tool, one guidance, something that they can use tomorrow. It's great to dream in that vision, and I'm so thankful for you all giving us that inspiration. But what's something they can do tomorrow when it comes to giving circles and this work around women's liberation? What's something they can do tomorrow? One tool, one piece of guidance. And I'll start with Felicia.
Hi, Elizabeth. I will say, so I'm a founder of a giving circle. So the Southside Giving Circle, I started prior to joining CFW as its CEO and president. So the one thing that you can do, we got me and 6 other girlfriends that I knew came together, started this circle, reached out to CFW and said, would you host us? And then we reached out to the friends and our network, and that council today has over 70 members. And so that's one thing you could actually just take it into your hand. When you look around, you're like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. You can get your girlfriends and you all know lots of people, your sorority sisters, and bring them together and start a circle and fund the change you want to see in your community.
I want to build on that if I can, Elizabeth, for my final word. And it's really building on that notion of bringing somebody along, but bring a young person. You know, we are working through the Young Women's Initiative here in Minnesota with innovators who are identifying problems and the solutions that they see, and they are bringing along their peers, and they are bringing along their parents and their aunties and their sisters. And so I encourage us to continue to build that muscle, because there is passion and those young women know what needs to happen in their communities. So that's my recommendation.
I'll just add in, because I've seen this around the world. And, you know, when we talk about giving circles, you know, women have way more to give than just money. I've seen circles, you know, of women that, you know, make music, add their voice to the issue. You know, I've seen them sort of do in amazing ways of giving. And so not just limiting yourself to money, but when you come together, think about what your voice does in the spaces that we're talking about, and how you can collectively build your voice in ways that, quite frankly, we've never been able to do before because of this whole online presence. So give everything that you have to the issues that you love the most.
We're going to let Anna close us out. All right, Anna, get ready. You know, to that point, the multi-generational piece is critical. We have a rural giving circle, and we forget about rural communities as well. These don't have to be city funds. But this rural circle in Pueblo is intentionally multi-generational. So they can also keep the history of their community moving forward. I think that as we think about the whole giving circle movement, rooting it in that history and into that future that Anna has talked about. Tools, Philanthropy Together has many of the members have other groups within the context of their work where you can learn, go to conferences and share, and also be gender expansive, I guess would be my last words. That as we talk about women and people of color, non-binary, we need to also be very gender expansive and recognize the various not only needs, but also resources, assets, and threats that are occurring to their communities as well.
Lauren, there's very little closing needed after that. And that is because I would say ditto to my incredible sisters. And the thing that we do, we act in solidarity. We don't act alone, which is what Lauren is also talking about. We see everybody, right? It really matters that we see each other. And it really matters that and when we see people, that's how we come together in a giving circle. We're saying, let's get our people together. And Lauren is saying, let's get our people and let's get all the people, right? Let's see the other people, whoever is me, but whoever is me and others and others and others, right? So I would say, let's think with abundance of our power, abundance of what we can do together, abundance of all the giving that we do, as Latanya said, abundance of our finances, but also abundance of our strength. Because I think that the most important thing for us is not to be scared of winning. We can win. Let's not be scared of winning. What does it mean? Because most of the time, all of our lives and all of our work, we orient towards getting there, getting to more justice, getting to alleviating suffering, getting to bringing voices that must matter, right? So, and then what does it mean getting there? How do we sustain that? We're sustaining each other. That's what women's foundations do. And we are, through giving. Imagine all the women's foundations are very big giving circle and that community. So what you can do tomorrow is say yes. When somebody invites you to join the giving circle, to go to the march, to register to vote, to support a candidate, to run for office, say yes.
Just mic drop. Thank you. I have the honor working with these amazing women, and I will now hand it over to Sara. Thank you again for having us in your house today, and we're with you. Thank you.
Oh my God. I mean, that chat is going crazy because you share so much love and power and wisdom. Thank you, Elizabeth, Lauren, Felicia, Anna, Latanya, Gloria. Thank you. We appreciate so much your insights, your truth, and the call to action. Yes, say yes, period, right? Like, don't overthink stuff, just do it. So thank you so much for being here with us and for closing this second day of We Give Summit. Before we wrap up, for everybody, please remember to answer a 2-question poll before exiting this meeting. Your feedback is super important for us for next year. And in the next few days, you will find a recording of today's session because there's so many good quotes here. Like, our team was going crazy, like, oh my God, this is a good quote. This is a good quote. You were amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you again, everybody, for joining us tonight. We look forward to see you all tomorrow morning, bright and early at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. We're going to be talking about Podcasting 101, how to build civic engagement with your members during your morning commute. Really fun, practical. So we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.